Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Coffee with Dr. Tom. I hope you have your coffee this morning. I would like to say I'm on my third cup trying to get this technology to work, but it's not the third. I don't do three. But welcome and glad you're here. Thank you so much. We had lots of technical difficulties here this morning, but we're here and really glad to be with you. So I'm going to share my screen here and bring some slides up. So let's do that and let's make it, there we go. And staying on top of the roller coaster of your immune system. And we've been in this now for a few months and we've been hearing, I should do this, that's not safe. Maybe I should do that, that's not safe. Yes, it is. And there's so much information that's coming out. Unless you're someone that reads the research every day, it's hard to stay on top of it and hard to know what is safe and what's effective and what's not. So I'm going to give you just some basics today, a little bit of a review of some of the things we've talked about before and some new things, but just the basics, the 101s that we don't have any disagreement about. So let's just get started here and move into this roller coaster that we're on. And it's not just with what do I do for my immune system, but how do I live life right now? And that's a profound topic that could take a lot of discussion and listening to different experts as how they see what's going on. But it's a roller coaster right now, and I want to give you some things that you can count on in the midst of this roller coaster and know that they're safe for you and your family. And first, thank you all so much for being here. It allows us to do our work and do what we love to do. So thank you so much. I've started every coffee with this slide. Prevention is the ultimate principle of wisdom. To cure a disease after it's manifested is like digging a well when one is thirsty or forging a weapon after the war has begun. Well, we're in the midst of the war right now, if you will. And so prevention may be a hindsight for some of us, but also for the future. You want to have some attention on what do I do to strengthen my immune system for myself and my family. What are the basic things that we can do that there's no contention on? There are many, many studies on. What are those basics? And then also, I'm going to ask that we take a look at how we are approaching this time of crisis worldwide as individuals. And we'll have a little discussion about that today. My mentor, Dr. Bland, in the first coffee, we started with this slide after the quote. And here, Dr. Jeff Bland, his quote comes in, which is, remember, if you're getting sick from this, it's a result of how you lived your life so far. And for those that say, well, I live a clean life, I'm healthy, then there's something you're missing. If you got sick, there's something you're missing right now on supporting your immune system. And if you've been doing everything right, that's great, way to go. And there's more to learn. Because the only reason people get sick when they're exposed to a bacteria or a virus is if your immune system can't handle it and keep that potentially negative thing under control. So it's the strength of your immune system that decides how, or not decides, determines how your body responds to an exposure you get. So evaluating lifestyle always comes in play. And what's the number one thing when we talk about lifestyle? Most of you have heard me say before that all degenerative diseases are diseases of inflammation. At the cellular level, the cell is always on fire. Well, is it a brain cell or an immune cell? Is it gasoline or kerosene? But it's always inflammation. From that perspective, the most inflammatory exposures we get the gasoline, if you will, is what's on the end of your fork. So when you think about this concept that Dr. Bland is giving us, and that this is a lifestyle disease, always the first thing is every meal, you're always choosing bright colors, and not food coloring colors, but bright vegetables, bright colored fruits. This morning in the hotel that Marzi and I are in here in Costa Rica, they had some small blackberries on the and they're organic. I said, oh, how great is that? And they tasted really bitter. They weren't great, but they were deep black. Bitter is a indicator, often, usually, of higher levels of polyphenols, and they stimulate the bitter receptors, which are really important during this immune time that we're in right now. So even if they're not the sweet raspberries or the sweet blackberries, the colors of the rainbow are going to support your immune system, always. Every meal, every selection should be based on, number one, is it safe food to eat? Number two, is it the colors of the rainbow? Are there deep colors in here? Okay. And I want to bring up this point to begin with, and at the end, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but as a society, and we feel, well, you know, I'm not responsible for what's going on here. I'm just trying to follow the guidelines, follow the rules, but we are unintentionally doing inhumane actions to our most vulnerable people. And it's fueled by fear. When we see the results of our action or inaction, and if we take a step back and we look, say, yeah, I'm fearful. And what am I referring to? The sickest of the sick in the hospitals. And what are we doing with the sickest of the sick? Not just from a viral exposure, but those that have cancer, those that have a brain tumor, those that have some other debilitating disease and they have to be in the hospital. What are we doing? We're isolating them. Children like this are in hospitals without their parents. Elders are dying alone in a bed without their loved ones around them. It's inhumane what we're doing, and there is no rationale to do this. There's no rationale. If you're putting a thermometer to the forehead of somebody before they can go into a store to make sure they don't have a fever, you put a thermometer on the forehead of a spouse before they go see their husband who's on his last day or two of life in the hospital, right? You check them if you want to, or you have an isolate, or you put them in space garb as they walk through the hospital to get to the room and let them be with their loved ones. This is inhumane, what's happening right now. If this were your child, what would you do? If this were your child and you were not allowed to go in the hospital to see your child, what would you do? Not pleasant thoughts to think about, but this is happening all over the world right now, especially in the US, where we've got police in full riot gear with submachine guns. Really? Really? We need to have police standing there with submachine guns? And there are, you know, great, I mean, the police officers are just doing what they've been ordered to do. So it's not their fault. And there are some that are acting out of bounds and should be held accountable for their actions, absolutely. But these guys are, they've been deployed out there. They didn't make the decision to go out there. So are you talking to your congressman? Are you talking to your mayor's office? Are you talking to your local city council people to say, this has got to stop? I don't want to get into politics, but we are treating people inhumanely. No call for that. Absolutely no call. Okay, back to the topic at hand. We know that there are two different immune systems. We've talked about this a lot. The innate immune system is the autoresponder, the first responders whenever something gets into our body. And the competence of the innate immune system is a critical factor for disease outcome if you're exposed to this virus. And these viruses, we know, are particularly adapted to evade the innate immune system. They hide out in ways that the innate immune system doesn't see them. So we really want to help the immune system to see them. We're going to talk about some of the things you can do that helps your immune system to see if there's a virus that got in that's trying to be sneaky and hide from you. So what are some of the safe, effective action steps that you can take? I'm going to show you some studies here. First one, of course, always the phenols, and go back to the earlier coffees. I think it was number 1 or number 2, where I talked about the polyphenols from bright colored fruits and vegetables inhibit the virus from grabbing onto the cell receptor. It's called an ACE2 receptor. Sorry for the geek stuff. But this, think of a receptor like a catcher's mitt sitting on the outside of the cell, and the pitcher throws the ball to the catcher. The virus goes into a specific catcher's mitt, which turns a door handle, and the virus gets inside the cell. Once it's inside the cell, now the immune system gets activated to kill this thing. And we'll talk about why zinc is so important. So there's immune system outside the cell, there's immune system inside the cell, or immune system actions outside the cell and immune system actions inside the cell. But first step, for the virus, the virus can't shed, that's the term for viruses, they don't reproduce, they shed and then go into your own DNA, and then they grow a little bit more and then they shed again. The virus can't shed in the bloodstream, as far as we know. It's got to get inside a cell to shed, right? So how do you stop the virus from getting inside the cell? Polyphenols do that. Polyphenols in blueberries and raspberries and resveratrol that comes from red wines and from grapes. All of the colors of the rainbow are a benefit to inhibit the virus from getting into the ACE2 receptor, turning the doorknob, opening the door, and getting inside the cell. So that's the first step, is the polyphenols. Every meal, like this morning's meal, Marjorie went down and got breakfast at the restaurant, and she saw that there were some organic blackberries there. So she grabbed them right away, because most of these hotels, for their quick meals, there's not a full service restaurant available in a hotel right now, but they put some things out. So we have some eggs, fried some eggs, a little bit of coconut oil, had a little plantain, and then she grabbed a little bit of rice and beans, and then she grabbed these blackberries and polyphenols. You need to think for every meal, where am I going to get some color of the rainbow in here? And if you just start thinking, well, all right, I'll eat a carrot. Great, that's a start. That's great. You don't want to do just carrots, but do some carrots, because carrots are higher in vitamin A, not a lot, but it's got vitamin A in it, which is really good to support your immune system. So you want to be thinking like that. Well, I don't know, there's not really much here. Oh, well, there's a carrot. Okay, I'll have a carrot. I'll have a couple of carrots. And just eat some carrots on the side, because you're thinking of the colors of the rainbow to support your immune system. Every meal, every time, you want to be thinking about what colors can I get in my meal at this meal today, and then at the next meal, and then the next meal. Now, we know that it will, and this is from an earlier slide or earlier coffee, we know that a primary reason why there was such an aggressive response to this in northern Italy, why so many people got sick, so many elders got sick and so many elders died, was because it's the highest air pollution in all of Europe. So the idea of accumulated air pollution in your body, it's called particulate matter. It's in your lungs. You've all heard that if you're a pack-a-day smoker for years, your lungs are just all full of tar. We've all heard that kind of concept before. Well, it's the same thing with the air you're breathing. It's just less, but accumulative over the years, and depending how much particulate matter is in the air, your lungs are all full of crud. They're full of diesel exhaust, particulate matter, which activates a much more aggressive immune response when a virus gets in, but it's successful at hiding out because your immune system in your lungs is already weak from all the particulate matter you've been inhaling for years. So your immune system's not tip-top shape in your lungs. And so the virus is more successful at hiding out and getting in there and shedding over a number of days. And somewhere between 3 and 7, 3 and 9 days later, now people start to get a little sick, get a little fever or something if they do. But the virus has already gotten a head start. Why? Because your lungs are full of crud that's been accumulating for years. And this is true for all of us who live in metropolitan areas. Some cities are much worse than others, but this is true for all of us. And why is it elders are the ones that are vulnerable to serious consequences from an exposure to this virus? Because their lungs are so full of crud, and because their immune systems have been weakened by so many other lifestyle habits over the years, that there are a number of accumulative factors over time that build up to make this body more toxic. And the more toxic it is, the more vulnerable you are to an innate immune response that's dulled. It's like, you try and slice an apple with a dull knife. You know how frustrating that is? It's like you want your immune system to deal with a virus you've just inhaled, and you got a dull knife. So one of the things that we all can do is clean your air. What does that mean? Well, where do you spend the most time? Indoors. So clean the air indoors. So I showed you this slide in an earlier session. This is a human hair. And when you look at particulate matter, it's the 2.5 parts per million particulate matter that comes from exhaust and other sources, but that's the one that accumulates the most. And this drawing shows you what a little grain of sand looks like. And this is like one human hair, and how small the particulate matter is that gets in your lungs and it gets stuck in there. Now, I showed you this study from NASA. And if you look here in this column of formaldehyde, parts per million, and benzene, parts per million, and trichloroethylene, parts per million, these are all things that are in your air, in your house. Why? Because the benzene and the formaldehyde come from the kitchen cabinets. They're not solid wood, they're pressed board, or from the varnish that's been placed on them. The trichloroethylenes come in flame retardants that are on the sofa with Scotch guards so your sofas don't stain, or the down comforter that you sleep with, and you're inhaling these flame retardant chemicals all night long because they all outgas. These things outgas. So in the air of your house is full of these toxic chemicals, and it happens regularly, every day when you're in your house. The plastic blinds on the windows outgas phthalates into the air. And you've heard me say before, the right angle when you're sitting down, you see the sun coming through the window sometimes, sunlight, beams of sunlight, and you see the dust in the air. That's what you're breathing all the time. You can just see it right now. It's not like it's worse in the moment that the sun's coming through, but that's what you're breathing all the time. So clean the air in your house. If you can afford it, get an air filtration system. We'll put you a link. We'll give you a link here for the Air Doctor. It's one of the finest ones I've ever seen. But get an air filtration system if you can afford it. If you can't, this study from NASA shows us, look at these six different house plants and how much formaldehyde they pull out of the air. 70% of the formaldehyde is pulled out with mass cane. 61% of formaldehyde is pulled out with pot mum, and then Gerber daisy, 50%. Just look at these numbers and you go, what? Yeah, the plants suck up all this stuff in the air so that it's not in the air anymore. They're a filter. They're a filtration system. Like the filter on your furnace. Well, if you have plants in the room, it's filters on the air, and they suck it up really well. So we've got a handout that will give you a download to. Houseplants are air purifiers. And it talks about the different plants you can get at the local nursery. And how much of these plants, I mean, did you have to live in a forest? No. Just a minute, let me get to the slide about the forest so that you'll read the handout. Here it is. NASA says that 1 or 2 plants for most rooms in an average house, 6-inch plants, 6-inch plants, that's it. 1 or 2 of those per 100 square feet of a room. So if a room's 10 by 10, that's 100 square feet. So 1 6-inch plant will take out a lot of the chemicals. It's a no-brainer. It cleans your air. It changes the environment you're in. So do the best you can. If you can afford an air filtration system, that's much better, especially for those that have some health condition they're dealing with, because you want the less toxins you have to deal with, the better the immune system can respond, and the stronger your not just your immune system, but your entire vitality level is if you're to detox and pull this stuff out. So 3 coffees ago, I think it was, I showed you this study that came out from my friends Sam Yunuk and Joe Pizzorno and Helen Messier and Kara Fitzgerald at the Institute for Functional Medicine, showing that there are different phases of immune response. And you don't want to take supplements to support your immune system that are dealing with the acute phase. If you've gone past that and you're now in the inflammatory phase, you don't want to take things that build up more of an immune response. So let me just talk about that a little bit with you. This is the summary slide of 4 different phases that occur with an immune response. Prevention, of course, you see that all of these are good for prevention. When you're exposed to something, choosing to take certain nutrients is a good idea to kind of, it's like jump starting your battery. You know, if the battery's dead on your car and a friend comes with a car and you put the cables between the batteries of his car and your car, the juice from his battery comes over to your battery. Now you can start your car and then you can disconnect the cables and everything's okay. Well, it's the same when you get exposed to something. If you get a light fever, 100, 101, 101 and a half, and if you get a sore throat, I blast my immune system. I'll take 10,000 units of vitamin C once or twice a day, 50,000 units of vitamin D. I get in there and blast it and hope to jumpstart my immune system to take care of this thing at the minor level it's at. You don't suppress the fever. Fevers are good for you. Fevers over 104, 104 and a half, not so good. You know, you want to watch those really close and work with your doctor. But fevers under 104, you want to thank your immune system. Oh, thank you, immune system. I feel really crappy today. You know, I've got 103 fever and I feel really lousy, but thank you for working so hard to protect me with this backup mechanism because my immune system wasn't able to do it on its own. So thanks so much for the extra help. That's how you want to look at this. If you get a fever of 101, 102, you want to say, I don't feel very good at all, but thank you. Glad it's here. Burn this baby out. Whatever it is you're fighting, burn it out. Now, I had a whole extended presentation I was going to show you today, and it died. I don't know how it died, but it died. I lost it before 20 minutes before we came on. And what I want to show you now is, I can't find it. I don't know where it is. I can't find it. I thought it'd be easy to pull up. But Ford, the motor company Ford, has installed and has the equipment to send to police departments all over the country, maybe all over the world, to install in their police cruiser cars. And what this thing does is please can turn the car on, get out of the car, lock it remotely, hit the button, and the temperature inside the car is going to go up to 133 degrees within 15 minutes. Because temperature kills virus. And you don't need to go up to 133, but that's what they're doing now to sterilize the cars because it works 100%, kills all bacteria, kills all viruses. So they're doing that. They just came out with this recently in the last few weeks. I had a nice picture of a police cruiser car, NYPD, and it was locked up and the exhaust coming out, you know, was running, and it's 133 for 15 minutes will sterilize everything. Now you can get your temperature in the inside of your car up to 150 by parking it in the sun with the windows up in the summertime. So you can accomplish a similar type of thing to keep your car clean by just parking it in the sun. Maybe in the parking lot there's no trees or something, or in your driveway of your house. Let it run for 15, or let it sit there. Just let it sit there for a few hours and heat up. And then of course you just open the car doors and let it cool down a little bit before you get in there. But it will, especially, you ever notice when you start your car and as the air conditioning kicks in through the vents, you get a little smell of something? That's mold. So you want to, temperature will kill mold also. So leave your car in the sun every once in a while. The equipment in the car is designed to handle up to 170 degrees. So the dashboard's not going to warp and crack when you leave your car in the sun to sterilize it. Just a simple thing you can do. In terms of nutrients, you see here that the third column down on the left that support, you see on the sideline, it says support NK cells. Those are natural killer cells. They're a part of our immune system and they're killers. And they're really good for you. But you don't take anything to support natural killer cells if you're in phase 3, meaning escalating inflammation. You don't want to produce more natural killer cells. You want your natural killer cells to be more effective, and you can get the ones that you already have more effective by what's called forest bathing. It means go for a walk in the forest. And the studies show that the air you breathe helps your natural killer cells be more effective, right? But you don't want to take these kind of supplements like astragalus and endographis and reishi mushrooms. You don't want to take those if you're in a high inflammation state. That's also true in the next column down on the left. It says support Th1. That means your innate immune system. And you do not want to take echinacea and golden seal, berberine, or bicolin if you are in a high inflammation state. So people ask, how do I know if I'm in a high inflammation state or not? Well, if you're inflamed, you're usually red. You usually notice that you're redder than usual, your cheeks are redder, or you may have a fever. There is a general test you can do, and it's an indicator of, do you have too much histamine in your body? And too much histamine, which is a good thing for you, but too much histamine causes more of an inflammatory state. So how do you tell if you have too much histamine in your body? It's a histamine scratch. So what you do on your tummy is you just take your hands and you just go 1, 2, 3. And notice there's no white marks because I'm tearing my skin here, but you do it across your tummy 3 times, 3 strokes. You feel the nails kind of tickling as they're going across a little bit. And within 10, 15 seconds, you look down. If you have red streaks across your tummy, that suggests you've got too much histamine in your body. You're inflamed. So consider that an escalating inflammation state if you're dealing with an exposure to a virus, and don't take those nutrients in columns, in lines 3 and 4. Okay. And of course, I've shown you where the former head of the CDC said, take vitamin D, it's going to help. And I've showed you the studies that say Great Britain just came out recently, I think it was in mid-April. The government said people should take vitamin D supplements because they're not out so much. And then I showed you this one, I think it was last time, that if you have dark skin, if you are colored, if you're Black or Mexican or Indian from India, that your skin blocks the sun from penetrating and converting hormones in your skin to vitamin D. These are the people that are much more at risk of having low vitamin D levels. And I showed you the studies already that if you have low vitamin D levels, you are hugely more at risk of having a serious reaction to a viral infection. And what they say in this study in the British Medical Journal, vitamin D supports the production of antimicrobial peptides in the lungs, making infection with virus and development of COVID-19 symptoms less likely. And it helps to reduce the inflammatory response to infection with SARS-CoV-2. So if you're in the inflammatory state, you still can take vitamin D. And at best, vitamin D will only be one of the many factors involved in determining the outcome of COVID, but it's cheap, it's inexpensive, there's no downside. Everyone should be taking vitamin D right now. Ideally, everyone should do a test to see what your vitamin D level is. Ask your doctor to do a test. If you can't get to your doctor or they won't do it for some reason, you can go to theDr.com /vitamin D test. We'll send you the finger prick test and you can test it yourself to find out. It's really important to know what your vitamin D levels are. Many people say, well, I'm taking vitamin D. I know I'm taking vitamin D. Yeah, but are you absorbing it? I mean, ideally, you want to check and see if what you're doing is being effective, right? So do the test. It's inexpensive and simple to do. And I showed you this study that was so cool, that the macrophages in the lungs that are the first responders to the virus coming in, they're part of the innate immune system. They're the first responders. And they fire a chemical bullet from a high-powered rifle, like Special Forces rifle, to kill the virus when it comes into your lungs, or the bacteria when it comes into your lungs. But what happened in the 1918 flu, what they found out, and what's happening now, is that the spring on the trigger of the high-powered rifle to kill the invader got stuck in the on position. The spring didn't work to pop it back. And so that high-powered rifle became a submachine gun. Pop, 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 pop. And that's what we call a cytokine storm. And increased macrophage activity. And these are the people in the 1918 flu, they were dead in 24 hours, right? Because of the cytokine storm. What we know now is that, and this is the paper that showed this way back in 2005. So we've known this for 15 years, but most doctors don't know this because this is a niche paper. You have to be looking for this kind of information to find it. It's not easily available. What we know is that when macrophages get activated to protect you, so when you fire that high-powered rifle to protect you, it turns on a safety switch in the macrophage. And the macrophage takes vitamin D that's in circulation, and it's the storage form of vitamin D. It converts it into the active form of vitamin D, which then releases the spring, and the trigger pops back. So vitamin D is the safety switch. When your trigger gets activated in macrophages to protect you, then the macrophage automatically converts the traveling storage form of vitamin D to the active form that acts as a brake, and it stops macrophage activity. What's that like? It's like driving downhill. You know, you take your foot off the gas and you're going downhill, and sometimes you have to ride the brake because the slope of the hill is so steep that you're going faster than you want to. So you have to ride the brake a little bit. That's what happens inside the macrophages when it converts the traveling storage form of vitamin D to active vitamin D. It's the brake that's slowing down the pow, pow, pow activity of your macrophages. So very cool, you know, when you read this stuff. But that's vitamin D. That's why you want to have more than adequate. You don't want to be at the low end of normal reference range. You want to be robust, between 50 and 75 nanograms of vitamin D per milliliter. You want robust levels to take care of you. And there's the blood spot test. That's the finger prick test for vitamin D. Ask your doctor to do it for you, but if they won't, you can still get it done. Vitamin D test. Yeah, theDr.com /vitamin D test, and you can get it done. What about vitamin C? Well, we know that when people are in intensive care because of viral infections or lung infections, 1 to 3 grams of vitamin C a day reduces their length of intensive care. They get well quicker. And in 3 different trials in which patients needed mechanical ventilation, meaning respirators, vitamin C shortened the duration of mechanical ventilation by 18%. Now that's really important because I showed you the study a few weeks ago, came out of New York in the Journal of the American Medical Association. 5,700 people, hospitals in New York, were put on respirators. 88.1% of them died. 9 out of 10 died. So you want to do everything you can to avoid a respirator. But if you need to be on a respirator, you better have an IV of vitamin C with it, right? Safe, effective. Given the insignificant cost of vitamin C, even an 8% reduction in intensive care is worth exploring. The effects of vitamin C on ICU patients should be investigated in more detail. Vitamin C and other antioxidants are among currently available agents to mitigate the COVID-19 acute respiratory distress syndrome. It calms down the lungs. Given the fact that high-dose vitamin C is safe, healthcare professionals should take a closer look at this opportunity. If you're not taking vitamin D, if you're not taking vitamin C, I don't know why you wouldn't, right? With studies like this. And we got links for you here for vitamin C and vitamin D and the others. But if you've got some, take it. Take what you've got. It's more important that you're taking it. Then you want to get the best you can and all that whenever possible. Zinc. Zinc inhibits the virus from shedding. And this is one reason why they see that the medication hydroxychloroquine is working so well, because hydroxychloroquine works as an escort to get zinc inside the cell. Zinc in the bloodstream has some benefits, but in terms of protecting you from the virus, not so much. The zinc has to get inside your cell, not just be on the highway. Your bloodstream is just a highway, lots of traffic on the highway, but you have to get off the exit and get into the cell to be effective. And things that escort zinc into the cell are called ionophores. That's the geek term for an escort. So we know that hydroxychloroquine is a zinc ionophore. It gets zinc inside the cell. The zinc then inhibits the virus from shedding, and you get well. That is part of the mechanism why quinine has been used for quinine for a couple hundred years, chloroquine for 70 years with malaria, because malaria gets inside the cell, the zinc stops it from shedding, and you get well. But you have to get zinc inside the cell for that to occur. Now, this is a really geeky slide, but I wanted to show it to you because these are different concentrations of zinc, none and 10 and 50, 100, 200, 250. And the darker this little dot, the more viral RNA there is in the cell. The darker the dot, the more viral RNA. Well, let me back up to that so you can look at it again. So the more zinc that is inside the cell, the less RNA shedding occurs. That's the takeaway from this really geeky slide. But it's important because it's directly with SARS-CoV-2. It's with SARS COVID virus. So it's important to make sure we get zinc inside the cell. So what have we talked about so far? Get your air clean in the house, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc ionophores. It's difficult to generate enough inside the cell concentrations of zinc. Therefore, taking some extra zinc may not play a role against SARS-CoV-2. When combined with an ionophore, such as chloroquine, cellular uptake is increased, making it more likely to achieve suitability elevated intracellular concentrations. Meaning, that's why they give you hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine, is to escort zinc inside the cell. But there are natural ionophores that you can use also. This slide says that just taking zinc by itself helps. It does help. It increased the frequency of people being discharged by 53% and being able to go home, and it reduced mortality by half. So just taking zinc by itself really helps, but it's even better if you take it with an ionophore. So the quercetin is an excellent zinc ionophore, and it's been shown to facilitate the transport of zinc across the membranes of cells. Lipid means the fat membranes in a cell, and quercetin gets zinc inside the cell. It's also important as one of the many flavonoids. Remember, we talked about flavonoids and the rainbow diet, shown to block the MERS-CoV-2 replication process. It doesn't shed, it blocks the shedding. In a molecular docking study looking for agents that could bind to SARS-CoV-2 protein, quercetin was effective. There are some medications also that are effective, but quercetin was effective. So here's some of the sources of quercetin. And capers are right at the top of that list. And I love capers, and Marcy puts them in a lot of things she cooks. You know, it's not dominant, but there's some in there. Red and white onions, asparagus, tomatoes, red grapes, kale, red apples, broccoli, red leaf lettuce, cherries, shallots, yellow and green peppers. They all have quercetin in them, which is an ionophore that escorts zinc inside the cell that stops the virus from shedding. When would you not choose foods with quercetin? So once again, this slide is here for you, and you'll always be able to come back and get it. This presentation is staying live on YouTube, on our YouTube channel for theDr.com. So you'll always have access to it. And these are the nutrients that have been shown to be helpful and effective with dosages that are safe, that you can use. And I gave you this slide last week and asked that you watch the video. It was 14 minutes long. Tony Robbins is someone that most of the world knows and has respect for as a guy that is a peak performance guy. And but he's talking about this current situation we're in, and he said this may be one of the most important podcasts we've done. And that is that the numbers aren't adding up. What they're telling you in the press is not adding up. It's not making sense. We've had hundreds of doctors do videos all over the world saying, you know, this is not what we're seeing in the ER, what they're talking about here. And 88.1% of people you put on a respirator die, meaning we're not thinking correctly about this. And people who die in the hospital from whatever they die from, maybe cancer, maybe kidney disease, who knows, doctors are being told to include COVID-19 in the diagnosis, many times without doing a test. Did they have a fever? Well, yeah, they had a fever. They had kidney disease. Well, it could be COVID. Put COVID on the death certificate. It's startling to hear this kind of thing, thinking that that goes on. But even Medicare gives more than double the amount of credit dollars to hospitals if there's a COVID-19 diagnosis on there. They get $36,000 per person if there's a COVID-19 diagnosis on it. They get, I think it was $18,000 if it's kidney disease. But if it's kidney disease with COVID, they get $36,000. So there's an encouragement for our administrators to be dictating down to our doctors, the foot soldiers that are doing all the work, put this on the diagnosis, the death certificate. Well, I didn't test them, put it on anyway. You know, there's all kinds of weird things going on that appear to have some type of big picture direction that it's moving in. I don't want to get into politics, but I want to introduce you to this. I hope you watch the Tony Robbins video. If not, please do. We'll give you the link here so that you then can just start asking some questions and looking at some of the information that's out there. It's really easy to say, oh, that person's just a conspiracy theorist. Really easy to write stuff off and not think about it at all and live in our comfort zone of fear that we have right now. It's really easy to do that. I am reminded of what happened in the late 30s in Europe when conspiracy theorists were talking about what the Nazis were doing, that in France and Great Britain and Belgium and Spain, people are saying, we got a problem here. Look what's happening. Conspiracy theorists. Leave me alone, we're fine. And a lot of that appears to be going on now. Writing off what might be occurring, because I don't know what's occurring in downtown Minneapolis right now. I don't know, I trust the news. You know, I watch the news and I'm learning that what the news tells us is not always the full picture. So I'm wanting to make you aware of this so that you start looking into this a little bit yourself. Most important is that we protect our bodies and our children's bodies. We protect our immune systems, do the rainbow diet, things like that. But I would welcome your feedback. I read all the comments that come in. So please let me know what you're thinking. You know, I'm not advocating any line of thinking here. I am advocating wake up. Just wake up and don't keep our heads buried in the sand. Or we may look back and really regret what's happened to us. All of the transcripts, this one will be transcribed. The transcripts are available. The videos will be available at YouTube for theDr.com. The slides are available. The studies I'm referencing are available. They're all available for you at theDr.com/coffee. So with that, I'll say thank you all so very much for attending. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. You know, it's kind of like treading on holy water for some people, and I don't want to ruffle your feathers too much, but I want to wake you up just to look for yourself and see what you find. And with that, I'll say thank you so much for your kind attention, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.